My feeders are full of dead bees, hive beetles, and it's really, really gross. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, good morning and welcome to day 10 of our beekeeping tips of the day. Today I want to talk to you just real briefly about managing your feeders. Feeding honeybees is kind of a necessity. At some point in time, you're probably going to need to feed your bees. It's going to happen sooner or later. When you do, you're probably going to do like a lot of us do, and you're going to try like 3, 4, 20 different things until you find something that you like. You may find that you use some things in some scenarios and other things in others. As an example, in a nucleus colony, I like to use a frame feeder because I don't have necessarily a lot of space, but if it's a smaller hive that I'm standing up, I don't have to add a separate box on top or make a custom box to put a feeder in. But when I'm using a much larger Langstroth 8 or 10 frame, I prefer to use a top feeder. Now, you'll figure out what works best for you over time. But one thing that is really, really important, especially if you're in the South or anywhere kind of where you're contending with the small hive beetle, a lot of times what happens in some types of feeders, particularly the frame feeders and some types of the top feeders, the ones that have the ladder floats in them, bees are going to get in there, they're going to be drinking up some of that sugar syrup, and they're going to die. And when they start to die and a few of them kind of collect in an area, it's one of those things, the hive beetle gets in there, they'll lay some of their eggs, they'll use the dead bee carcass as a place to lay their eggs, and you'll have larvae coming out. It just gets really gross and nasty. So whether it's a frame feeder that has the floats in it, whether it's a top feeder with the floats, whatever kind of feeder it is, if it's openly accessible, I really need you to be in there looking at that at least every 2 or 3 days. Don't leave that thing unattended. I promise you, you will regret it. Now, there's a couple of things you can do if you want to kind of eliminate that as even being a possibility inside the hive. Number one, you can go with a bucket feeder, and this would be where you would have a hole. Essentially, you can do it in different ways. You can have a hole in the outer cover, and your bucket's going to sit on top of that, and it's going to create a seal around that hole. The bees can come up, drink the nectar or the sugar syrup out, and then take it back in, and there's nothing else going on. They're not getting into the bucket, and there's no risk of anything happening to them. So that's one way of going. Another option is to use a bucket or a jar inside of a hive body. So you would have a regular hive body where the frames kind of stop right about here. You put another hive body on top of that, and what you can do is take a jar and on the metal lid, just poke some, just small holes. I was trying to think of the penny nail size that I use, but just a small like finish nail, and just make a couple of holes in it and flip it upside down. You can set that on top of a couple of shims, and the bees can come up underneath and then drink the syrup right out of the bottom from those holes. So again, there's no risk of bees drowning. You're not going to have small hive beetle larvae getting in there and messing anything up. And it's clean. When it's time to refill it, you just reach in, grab the jar, fill it back up, drop it back down. So jars and buckets, I like them a lot because if you're using them on the outside, you don't even have to open the hive to refill the bucket. You just pull the bucket off, put a new one on, or refill that one and put that one back on. But whatever you're doing, I really, really cannot stress enough. You have to manage those feeders that are inside your hive because they will get funky and nasty. Even if you don't have small hive beetle issues, once the bees start dying and drowning in that sugar syrup, it's going to get gross. So if nothing else, please try to at least check them every 3 days. Folks, that's all I got for you on today's tip of the day. If you found any value to it at all, please consider subscribing and just real gently tapping that like button for me if you would. Outside of that, be kind to one another, take care, and remember that I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.